What's going on, everybody? C4 here, and today we are continuing our 2018 draft prep by taking a look at the big uglies. Now, this may not be the most flattering or exciting video to do, but oftentimes it is one of the more crucial positions that people try to look for feedbacks and opinions on certain players, and that's talking about offensive linemen, because every team needs them. You can never have too many offensive linemen. So what I am going to do today is try to break down the top 5 interior offensive linemen and the top 5 tackles for the upcoming draft class, and kind of give you a preview. Because literally, you look at all 32 teams in the NFL, all 32 would be looking to add more offensive linemen at some point in this draft. So as we talk, there is the original rankings that we have up here. We will go right through them. So at number 5, we had Will Hernandez from UTEP. Number 4 was Martez Ivy from Florida. He went back to school. Number 3 was center Billy Price from Ohio State. Number 2 was Braden Smith from Auburn. And number 1 was Quenton Nelson from Notre Dame for our interior offensive lineman. For the tackles at number 5, we had Mitch Hyatt from Clemson, who went back to school. Number 4, we had Trey Adams from Washington. He went back to school. Number 3 was Orlando Brown from Oklahoma. Number 2, Mike McGlinchey from Notre Dame. And number 1, Connor Williams from Texas. So now my ratings have changed quite a bit. Lots of familiar names from those players that we just talked about, but a lot of them, I feel like I have a lot more of a secured grasp on where I want to place these players. And much like every other position we've kind of broke down before, like tight ends, wide receivers, running backs, maybe not so much quarterbacks, but the skill position players, those can drastically change based upon the combine. I really feel like offensive line, not so much. I mean, maybe more when you're looking at the tackles, because, you know, if a tackle puts up a really bad bench press, that can kind of hurt his stock a little bit. But I feel pretty confident with this list that you're going to see. And unlike the other positional breakdowns, there's no real tape. I can show you a couple pancake blocks for each one of these players. I figure, you know, it's the least sexy of the position. We don't want to dwell on it too long. I just want to get the information out there, get you guys some names to go look at if you want to do your own little film study and get excited for the draft. So we're going to start with the top 5 interior offensive linemen. So we're just grouping the guards and centers together. We have 2 honorable mentions. Both of them are centers. Number 1 is Frank Ragnow, the center from Arkansas. Very talented center, who should be probably the 2nd center out the board. And honorable mention number 2 is James Daniels, the center from Iowa. He is a big-time favorite over on NFL.com in the draft rankings. And I had to look at a little bit of his draft breakdown. He looks pretty good for a center. Very athletic, very well-rounded. I would say, you know, more upside than a completed project right now. So we have 2 honorable mentions for the centers because there is only one center that makes our official top 5. Going into interior offensive lineman, number 5 is going to be Braden Smith, the offensive guard from Auburn. Originally was number 2. The more I looked into it, the more I was just like, man, I probably should not just judge him on his midseason tape. Looking at the beginning of the Auburn Tigers season and the end, a little inconsistent, but when you look at him, he's 6'6", 305, so with that size there, I think he's pretty versatile. You could probably move him literally anywhere on the line, even though he might not have experience there. When you look at the pros from Braden Smith, 1, he's excellent power. This guy's an absolute monster, and I would say he has better pass protection than run, which is why I honestly believe, even though I don't think he's ever really played much guard at Auburn, he could be a tackle in the NFL. He has the frame, he has the size. We could add maybe 10 pounds, give or take, maybe 20 pounds. He could eventually transition to a tackle, I believe. But, you know, I definitely think he's a guy that has some upside. Not necessarily a day 1 starter. Might need to kind of, you know, ease in and get that big first year that a lot of rookies get on the strength and conditioning programs in the NFL. When you look at Braden Smith, though, I think right now if he stays as a guard, somewhat limited upside. I think if we are truly evaluating him as a guard, I think he might be a finished product for what he is. But I think you might be able to tap some different potential if you decide to play him at one of the tackle spots. But as of right now, I think in terms of talent, he definitely is an interesting guy that if he goes to the right team would be a nice pick. Going to number 4, it's Isaiah Wynn, the offensive guard from Georgia, 6'2", 300 pounds. The pros, he's a tremendous athlete. He's very, very versatile. He played a little bit of tackle at Georgia, but that size, there's no chance in hell he's going to play tackle in the NFL. He is an interior guard, and he's absolutely great in pass protection. You think of Georgia offensive lineman, you think running the ball, Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, but really, he was a tremendous pass blocker. When you look at the negatives for him, obviously his length, he's not the biggest guy, and bulk. It's just size in general. He is undersized offensive lineman, but technician, yes. Great athlete, yes, usually those two things can kind of overcome the size thing. And plus, like I said, 300, he's not going to stay at 300 once he gets through training camp and probably into his second season. So in terms of a guy with upside, I definitely think Isaiah Wynn has plenty of upside, and really, I think he's going to be a guy that probably will rise up a lot of people's draft boards after the combine. Going to number 3 is going to be the only center on the list, and that is Billy Price, the center from Ohio State. He was number 3 in my original rankings. Staying here at number 3, 6'4", 315 pounds. The positives is that he is a great athlete. He is a leader. He is going to be, I would say he's probably one of the favorites to put up a whole lot on the bench press. And I think he is a day one starter at center. Very similar to Pat Elflein, who eventually became the starter for the Minnesota Vikings offensive line. I think Billy Price, wherever he goes, if you are a center-needy team, I know there may be a lot of hype to James Daniels from Iowa, but I still think, you know, the proof is in the pudding and the tape doesn't lie. Billy Price is your day one starter at center. I don't know off the top of my head what teams are in an immediate need of center, but there's definitely a handful of teams, I'd say half a dozen or so, that could use a player of Billy Price's caliber. The only thing is you probably, unless you have a high pick in the second round, are going to need to trade up to go get this guy. When you look at the negatives of Billy Price, sometimes his footwork can, you know, have him give some troubles, even though he's freakishly strong. If you have bad footwork, doesn't matter how strong you are, if you can't get the right plan and send the guy back, you're always going to lose the leverage battle and the momentum battle in general. So if he can get more consistency to his footwork, he is going to be a very good starting center in the NFL. Going to number 2, it is going to be Will Hernandez, the offensive guard from UTEP. We all know how I feel about UTEP players, but Will Hernandez is an absolute beast. 6'3", 330 pounds. The positives, excellent run blocker. If the guy ahead of him wasn't in the draft, I think Will Hernandez would be almost a lock for the first round. He is a day one starter, and really the only negative is his length. You guys 6'3", I think he's going to be one of those guys that might measure like barely 6'3". I probably could have double checked his Senior Bowl measurements, but his arms are kind of stubby, a little bit stubby. As someone that has not the longest arms myself, when you have just sheer power and sheer viciousness, you usually can overcome that, which I think he will. So if you're looking for an interior offensive guard, you know, I think there might be a run. He might go late first, kind of like Josh Garnett did a couple years for the 49ers. But ultimately, I think he's going to be late first, mid-second, somewhere in that range. But he's definitely a day one starter in the NFL. And then finishing out at number 1, it is Quenton Nelson, the offensive guard from Notre Dame, 6'5", 330 pounds. He is really the complete offensive guard. He's a day one starter. I could not find a single weakness when I looked at him. I think he is, out of all the players, I think Saquon Barkley is 1, and I think Quenton Nelson is 2 in terms of guys that they're just not going to bust. Barring an injury, something that's really out of their control, they are going to be legit studs in the NFL. Quenton Nelson's tape's as good as Zach Martin's was coming out of Notre Dame, and I mean, he's an absolute beast. And obviously, he's not going to go super high because offensive guard is that kind of position. But, you know, it's really still kind of tough to say in this day and age that offensive guard is worthy of a top 10 pick. I think in reality, he's worth of a top 5 pick. He is that good. He is that can't miss. And with that size, I mean, you could probably get a little wonky with it. You could probably play him at a little bit of right tackle if you needed to. But where he's going to make his money is in the interior. This guy here definitely is a future All-Pro. Next up is the offensive tackles, the sexier of the least sexy offensive line position to talk about. Before we jump into the top 5, I have 3 honorable mentions. At number 1, we have Martinez Rankin from Mississippi State. I think he is definitely a guy with a lot of upside, just missed the list. Number 2 is Desmond Harrison from West Georgia. I think if you're looking for a prospect tackle that it could eventually be a legitimate starter, he's a guy in 285. Could be interesting to see what he officially weighs in at. I definitely think he's a whole bunch of upside. Not so much year 1, but he's going to be a guy year 2, year 3. Could be very, very interesting. Remember last year we had Julian Davenport from Bucknell, was kind of the big project type tackle. I don't think Desmond Harrison's nearly as much of a project type player. More so just get him bulked up, get him strength things. If he can go to a team with a lot of veteran tackles, that'd be a great spot for him to learn. Philly, but I think he's a good prospect. And number 3 is Brian O'Neill, the tackle from from Pitt. Had a terrible Senior Bowl, but the Senior Bowl is not usually the best spot for offensive linemen to shine because it's a lot of, you know, who's the stronger of the two, because it's a lot of one-on-one drills, whereas Brian O'Neill is a much more athletic type tackle. He's really the guy that probably out of these honorable mentions was closest to getting my number 5 spot. I think he might be one of the better left tackle prospects in this year's draft class, but, you know, the bad Senior Bowl, I personally do kind of be a little bit biased towards really good Senior Bowl performances and really bad ones. So that is why he just came shy of my list. And, you know, unless something drastically changed from the combine, I don't really think I'm going to revive my offensive line rankings, but you never know. So jumping into the official top 5, At number 5, we have Colton Miller from UCLA, 6'8", 310 pounds. The positives is he has NFL size, he is very solid in pass and run game, and he finishes his blocks. Finishes blocks is something that is absolutely key for me when I look at offensive linemen, because I absolutely hate offensive linemen that don't finish blocks. You see it still in the NFL. Guys that are incredibly talented can make an NFL roster, hell, can even start, but they don't finish their blocks. When you see a running back get tackled from behind because an offensive lineman is just jogging or looking stupid or looking oblivious when the quarterback's getting hit because they just decided not to finish the play, it drives me nuts. And anytime an offensive lineman finishes a block, it is definitely going in the positive category, and Colton Miller does that. Like I said, with the NFL size, he's 6'8", 310. If he could bulk up, maybe add 5 to 10 pounds, that'll be in the money range. The negatives for him is I do believe he's kind of combine based. No one really knows how athletic or how strong he is. It's kind of on the curve. So I definitely think a good combine, even a big combine, could definitely shoot Colton Miller from number 5. Maybe as far as number 3. I feel like the 5 through 3 could definitely interchange based off the combine. Going to number 4, it's going to be Chukwuma Okorafor from Western Michigan, 6'6", 330 pounds. When you look at the positives, he is incredibly versatile, can play left or right, has experience playing both. He is NFL size to a T, and he is good in the run and pass. Pretty much the exact same positives as Colton Miller. When you look at the negatives, though, he's a little bit of a project player. I think he... some of the tackles we're going to talk about probably will be able to start day one. I don't really get that vibe from Okorafor. Maybe mid-season could fill in for an injury if need be, kind of like maybe Big V for the Philadelphia Eagles. But I think for a guy like him that definitely needs to get more consistency and really just complete the mechanic aspect of his game, it'd probably be best if he could be a year 2 starter. But because he has that upside, he could be a guy that might slip into the first round, but I think should be a lock to go in the second round of the draft. Going to tackle number 3, it is going to be Mike McGlinchey from Notre Dame, 6'8", 315 pounds. We do with the positives, again, versatile, can play left or right tackle, a technician. Guy is very technically sound with his hands and footwork. He is a great athlete, very, very athletic. Very rare to see a guy that's 6'8", that kind of size, that can move like he can. And he's experienced. He is a guy who played a lot of snaps in football for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And, I think offensive line is definitely one of the positions you do like guys that have a history of production and history of snaps versus, maybe the younger guys. I don't really think, honestly, at the top of my head, how many times like a red shirt sophomore declares for the NFL draft. So, I definitely like that from Mike McGlinchey. When you look at the negatives, bulk up. He definitely has a thin frame for that 6'8" body. Kind of similar to Colton Miller a little bit. I really have the difference maker between McGlinchey and Miller. I think McGlinchey is a much more proven athlete. You can see it in his play. And for Mike McGlinchey, definitely needs a little bit more consistency. That is one of the most common knocks people have against Mike McGlinchey. If he was a little bit more consistent, he might have a chance to be regarded as the #1 tackle in this year's draft class. I still think he will be a first-round prospect, but when all is said and done, man, I would like to see him maybe get up to 325, 320, add more muscle. That would be probably better. And those are all things that come once you, get into the NFL in your training camp. So definitely see him still as a first-round tackle. Go to number 2. It's going to be Orlando Brown from Oklahoma, 6'8", 360 pounds. A monster of a man. He has elite length. You want long arms more often than not on your tackles, and he has that in spades. He is very, very versatile. Can play left or right. I think he might be more slated for right tackle, but I kind of believe the myth of a guy that can only play. Usually, the left tackle is more athletic. The right tackle is the bigger, slower guy because you want your left tackle to protect your quarterback. But really, in reality, defensive ends move all around the field. It's not so much like the 90s or the early 2000s where, you pretty much got, like Richard Sherman approach to most of your guys on the defensive line. They stayed where they were. So, you have to be good. There's no more, like, escaping and saying, the lesser of a 2 tackle is the right tackle. But I think Orlando Brown can play both, and he absolutely finishes blocks. He looks pretty ugly, and sometimes it's not the flashiest, not the most technical, but because of his size and his aggression and his mentality, he gets it done. No matter, it might not have to be pretty, but you're an offensive line, you're a big ugly, you're a big mauler. Just get it done. When you look at the negatives, I think 360 is a little big. If you can get that down to like a 340, that would be ideal, I think, for a lot of teams. And he sometimes has shaky footwork, like I said. Sometimes looks like Bambi on ice a little bit. But he's finishing his blocks. He's a big enough body that even when if he slips or if he has a mistake like that, he can usually still disrupt the pass rusher. So I think Orlando Brown is definitely going to be a first-round tackle, and it's very, very legit. I'm very interested to see what his bench press will be at the combine, because it seems like, a lot of times the guys with long arms don't put up big. You see a guy 360, 6'8", you're going to be like, oh, he's going to put up 40 on the bench press. But guys with the really, really long limbs, It's odd. Like I said, I was really surprised when Myles Garrett put up the numbers he did last year. So let's see. I'm going to be interested to see if Orlando Brown can put up something in the 30s. And finishing up at number 1, we have Connor Williams from Texas. He was number 1 last time. He's still number 1. I know there's a lot of people. It's kind of a controversial pick nowadays. A lot of people are getting off the Connor Williams hype train. I still like the tape. He's 6'6". He's 315. You look at the positives. He's versatile. He's a guy that can play left or right, but I think he is going to be a left tackle in the NFL. He's an absolute technician. Footwork, hand movement, hand fighting. Yes, yes, yes. Best in the class, I think. And it kind of overcomes his athletic shortcomings. He's not a great athlete. He's not a terrible athlete, but, you know, nowadays you look at the Lane Johnsons, tackles that are very, very athletic, or Terran Armstead, for example. Those guys there are just freak athletes. He is definitely not that, but he has the technical ability to overcome that. And he finishes blocks, and he's an incredibly high football IQ. Check, 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 check. First round pick. He's a first round pick. We look at the negatives. The length, he doesn't have the longest arms. We might be able to put up an impressive bench press. That would be nice. And like I said, his explosiveness, he's somewhat of a limited athlete. Whereas when you look at maybe Mike McGlinchey or Chukwuma Okorafor, I think these guys here pretty athletic. So we're trying to find negatives. We're trying to just make you aware. Because, I mean, certain schemes, they want guys that are more athletic. So if you need the more athletic guy, Connor Williams might not be your guy. But if you really want to get in there with the technical ability and assume that maybe your strength and conditioning program can overcome some of his shortcomings, I think Connor Williams should be the first tackle selected. So there you go, guys. Those are my offensive line rankings. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of them in the comment section below. As always, if it's your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. There is much, much more draft content to come. We're still going to talk about defensive line, edge rushers, linebackers, corners, and safeties, as well as mock drafts. Draft season's just starting here on the channel. So smash the like button if you enjoyed, and until next time, it's C4 saying peace